All right, what's up, everyone? It's Wednesday. It's another episode of Jawing and Bawing, and we got the man himself back. We have Amon back from his vacation in Texas, even though it was a working vacation. We'll put it that way. How are you, man? Welcome back. Glad to have you back on the show.
I'm doing good, Tony. I'm glad to be back in North Carolina, back on the show. Now 19, so it's a little bit weird, or maybe I'm a little bit wiser, closer to you guys out there in the age realm. So I'm glad to be back.
That hurts so much, man. I hope you know. And, I even have like the powder blue. It's like the Tar Heel, like blue Outer Banks, Carolina
There
short,
you
like
go.
shirt
You're
on.
feeling
Like,
it today.
did this
North
just for you,
Carolina spirit.
man. Did this just for you, and you're like, you're old, man. You're old. Can't do it. And unfortunately for anybody that watches the show, Joe's not on with us tonight. I think Joe's going to be out for about a week or so. Hopefully he'll be back next week. But we'll see. Mon and I are going to try to talk him into it. In the meantime, though, there's been a little bit of some sports news that happened. I know the big thing everybody's waiting on is NBA free agency. We've already seen some moves. We've seen Russ opt into his contract with the Lakers, which we figured that was going to happen. We've seen Kyrie kind of shock the world, opt in with the Nets. There is a lot of potential that he could potentially be traded from there. Still like a sign and trade type deal, which would make a lot of sense. But the only team that's willing to do that is the Lakers. Financially, how do they do that? I don't know. I don't think they can. And then, of course, James Harden, I believe, also opted out of his to try to help the Sixers get more money, be able to get some more people in. But we're going to move into the college world because the big thing that happened over the last week is Arch Manning finally made a decision on who he is going to commit to. And again, just for Joe, it is to the University of Texas. And the reason why I put the on the University of Texas is because, for those of you who don't know, I refuse to give this any more spotlight than what it has. Ohio State has trademarked the word the for their merchandise. Therefore, now for me, every other school is going to have the in the title except for Ohio State. So, Amon, what's your first initial thought of Arch Manning going to Texas? Because again, it was, for the most part, we knew it was down to Texas, Alabama, and Georgia. So what's your thought on he picked really the one that everybody would probably say is the most surprising?
Yeah, I think you have to give your hats off to the Texas folks and what they did in the sales pitch wise. And I think they told Arch, look, we're going to the SEC and you're going to be part of this big rebuild, this new brand of bringing Texas football back into the spotlight. We still make a lot of money. It's not like we don't make money and we won't have state of the art facilities. You're going to get NIL deals, but now you're going to be the face of this huge university as we head into the SEC. And you're going to be a big part of our success and our brand success. I think that's number one because you're not going to go compete with the defending champs in Georgia and Alabama right away. You're not going to go out there and say, "Oh, well, we're just better than them overall. Our rosters are usually better," because that's just not true. But you say, "Look, Arch, you have an opportunity to build a legacy as the quarterback who brought Texas out of the depths and back into the SEC and into the spotlight after over 10 years of just being reduced to nothing."
Yeah, I agree. And when I first saw it, it doesn't really surprise me because you think of, there's been a few times it's been mentioned like, NFL royalty as far as families go. You look at the Manning family and how much that spanned across. Now, realistically, I don't consider Archie Manning like in the same tier as his sons as far as Eli and Peyton go. Now, don't get me wrong, great quarterback, but he never got them a Super Bowl. If I remember right, he actually had a pretty crappy record with New
Yeah.
Orleans. Now, to his credit, he's been the only quarterback that New Orleans has ever decided to spend a first round pick on, like, since. So he did something right. Um, so I mean, you look at what Peyton was able to do throughout Indy, throughout Denver. You look at what Eli was able to do for New York and with the Giants. So now, like you said, Arch Manning goes to Texas, and we've talked about this on the show before. What are probably some of the biggest college football name brands in college? USC, Texas, Alabama, Ohio State, and like Michigan. Maybe a couple others you could probably throw in there, at least just for football. and Texas is one of them. So again, why not kind of revitalize that old college nostalgia? Because for a lot of people, again, to me, I equivalated Texas to the Dallas Cowboys. Great in the 90s, has had past success almost all the time. The last 15, 20 years, beyond mediocre and nothing more. Like and really, and I want to ask you this: how impressive is Texas now that they just did a thing? 24/7 Sports came out and they've rated only 5 quarterbacks ever with 5 stars, and Texas has had all of them at some point, and they have 2 of them currently. They had Vince Young back in the day. They have Quincy Ewers, who transferred from Ohio State, and now you have Arch Manning. So, like you said, what does this say about just Texas as a whole? And again, this is through like regime changes. Like, Vince Young is way back in the day, completely different coach. You pull Ewers from Ohio State, where it's like, okay, there's a lot of expectations that CJ Stroud is probably going to go to the NFL next year. So, Quincy could potentially have at least 2 years of starting at Ohio State if he really wanted to, but now he goes to Texas, and I would be willing to bet the expectation is okay, how do you do this year? And oh yeah, by the way, next year Arch is our starter. Figure it out. Okay, bye.
I think it is impressive, Texas and what they've been able to do with the quarterbacks and bringing a lot of the 5-star guys. And, again, I think it just goes to show the power of their name. Even if they're not performing well, guys still want to go to Texas because it's the University of Texas. You're talking about the Longhorns, and as much as we all want to, talk about how they haven't been good, just like the Dallas Cowboys, they just have that brand name power. They have the nostalgia that comes with it. The interesting thing with Quinn Ewers is that he initially was part of the class of 2022, but then reclassified to the class of 2021. So he will be eligible for the 2023 draft, and that is when you'll see Arch Manning come in. So maybe you have 1 year where Arch is behind Quinn, and then Quinn goes to the draft and Arch comes in. So I think there is a balance and a thing that is going to have to be figured out there for the University of Texas. But I think it's a great problem to have if you're in school. I think I would rather have to worry about having 2 5-star guys and having no 5-star guys at quarterback.
But I will say, too, if you're Texas, do you sit Arch, though, for a year? Because, I mean, he's a big name, and he's one of those kids that, and especially now that the transfer portal is so much easier, I mean, do you blow that type of talent? Like, hey, again, give Ewers his chance this year, but then also be realistic with him. Like, look, either you can stay, but there's no guarantee you're going to be the starter because we got Arch, which was big compared to Bama and Georgia, because he didn't have to go here. He could have very easily been in a national championship, picture with those 2 programs as compared to us. So, again, do you even do that, or do you look at him and say, hey, look, either this is your year, do what you can. We love to have you, but we were not expecting to get Arch, even though we were super in the competitive for him. Do you just tell him, hey, kick rocks next year, like go to the draft, something? Or, again, like you said, do you think that you still sit Arch for a year and let him learn? Because it's one of those, I feel like he's going to be a lot like how they kind of treated Trevor Lawrence of, hey, he's pretty much the golden prodigal child. He needs to start right now before we lose him type thing.
Yeah, and I think if you're Texas, that conversation had to have been had with Arch. Say, look, Quinn is here. We're going to give you every opportunity to compete with him. I don't think you want to guarantee anything to anybody because I think that's how you can kind of get complacent. But he, like you said, he is the Trevor Lawrence. He is this prodigal child that everyone's been talking about. Again, he still has a senior year of high school to complete. He's in the class of 2023. I think we all forget that too. It's not like he's coming out, this fall and playing at a school. No, he's the class of 2023. So we've been talking about him since he was a sophomore in high school. That's the impressive part about what Arch Manning is. And of course, it comes with the name Manning. But you also have to be fair to Quinn and say, well, this kid we were also talking about him in his sophomore year. He was, rated 5 stars coming out of 24/7 Sports out of high school. There's a reason that, Ohio State was really interested in pulling for him. They just got CJ Stroud the year before that, and he has all the arm talent in the world. it just comes down to Quinn this year. If Quinn comes out with a good year and shows he can compete against these SEC teams, it's going to be hard to turn away from that, right? And maybe Arch has said, look, I'm more than willing to sit. But I think a lot of it depends on Quinn Ewers. If he shows that I'm good against everybody but the SEC, yeah, Quinn could be looking for his third home and looking like Spencer Rattler, where he's just kind of bouncing around from home to home because they would rather go with Arch Manning.
Yeah. Now, I know this is early, and again, we don't know how either one of these two is going to pan out as far as even their collegiate football careers. Is it too early to call Texas quarterback university?
I think it is because, again, you still have Ohio State. Justin Fields just came out. C.J. Stroud looked like a Heisman contender. Alabama, Mac Jones had a phenomenal rookie year. You talk about Bryce Young, who won the Heisman last year. There's a lot of schools producing a lot of good quarterbacks. USC is not going anywhere in terms of quarterbacking play either. They have Caleb Hutchinson there. They got the number one guy in the class of 2022 coming. So they have plenty of, a lot of schools are pulling a lot of quarterbacks over there. So until we see one of these two guys play, again, Quinn's never played a snap of college football yet. He's been behind C.J. Stroud his entire time at Ohio State. So until we see these guys play, in terms of star power, sure, you might call them that, but in terms of actual play, it's too early to call.
And then Joe's question, over or under titles at 0.5 in his Texas career?
I would say under. Trevor Lawrence only had one. He went to, he was in the playoff every year, but only had one. And he was Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, and Clemson was a powerhouse at that point in time. Texas, they still got to build that roster, still got to compete in the SEC. I'm going to say under on the 0.5.
Yeah, I'm going to say under. It's one of those that's not like Alabama's going anywhere. You're still going to have Bryce Young. Now, again, we don't know who the quarterback is behind Bryce Young yet as far as after Bryce is finished, because there's a lot of expectations he's going to be in next year's draft, which is very likely.
He could be in this year's draft, yeah. Yeah. In 2022.
Georgia has JT Barrett, and they have a 5-star as well, if I remember right, like a transfer or somebody like that was big. It was like a big name. It was one of those they had Barrett, and it was like, okay, well, who do we do we give the keys to him? Do we let this kid go? What do we do?
JT Daniels was the kid.
JT Daniels. I know JT Barrett was there, but yeah, do they give the keys to JT Daniels? And again, now that one was a little bit trickier because I think him and Arch would actually be like there at the same time. And again, I think JT is actually fairly young, so it's like, do you say, oh, sorry, JT, we fought really hard for you, but we're going to go with Arch. Bye. Like, it'll be interesting. And it's also interesting that all of the Manning kids, for whatever reason, have all decided to go to SEC schools, with Archie and Eli going to Ole Miss, Peyton going to Tennessee, and now Arch going to Texas, soon to be SEC team as well. So it'll be interesting to say the least, though. All right, let's move on to our next topic, though. We'll move on to a little bit of NFL. So Terry McLaurin and AJ Brown, we both saw sign big offseason deals. Terry McLaurin just signed a 3-year, $71 million deal. I can't remember what the Eagles paid AJ Brown. I know it was a ton of money, and they did it on draft night too. So that just leaves DK and Deebo, two guys out in the West, both waiting. How much higher do you think their money is going to go, or do you think one of them is going to get less? I will say I think DK is going to get paid more just because he's been more consistent in his time in the NFL. He was a big surprise. It was one of those, not a lot of people had him high on their draft boards because he was at Ole Miss too, wasn't he? If I remember right? Yeah. He was at Ole Miss, didn't really have an outstanding year, didn't have a lot of big numbers, but he was big, he was physical, and now that has translated well to the NFL, which again is surprising because we've seen a lot of guys, they're great at the combine, and it does not translate over well at all when they actually play a professional game. Now, Deebo didn't really break out until this past season. Like, Deebo was there, like we knew Deebo, but it wasn't like Deebo was really turning heads. It was like, man, if this kid can just make it click, he can potentially be really good. And then he did that this season. But again, there's not a lot of consistency. So I could see a team though, maybe like Baltimore, maybe even like a Washington, like kind of overpaying for a kid like Deebo, because again, it's not like they wouldn't potentially be worth it. You see what can be there, but to me, I think DK should get the higher of the two. And to me, if I'm the 49ers with Deebo, the way I would do it is I would offer him a kind of a base contract of, hey, real similar to Terry's. I don't know what Terry's getting paid. If he's getting paid, what, $71 million a year?
I think it's 22 and some change.
Yeah, probably with some incentives in there. If I'm them, I offer Deebo $19 million a year, but I also tell Deebo, hey, I'm going to offer you $19 million a year as a receiver. Now, if we use you as a running back, if we use you as the tight end, a wildcat package, whatever, you have like $30 million extra dollars in incentives that you can earn on top of that for 3-4 years, which would bump him into let's see, if we do 30 million, we'll say 4 years, that's about another 7. So you're going to be making about 26 million a year potentially, depending on how we use you, and that would put you in the grand scheme of things. But again, if we don't use you like that, you're only getting about 19. You may or may not be able to recuperate some of that if you let us use you in something different. I don't know if Deebo would go for that. I doubt if he would, but that's just me. Do you think kind of the same thing? Do you think they're both going to get a massive payday? Do you think maybe the opposite? What's your thoughts?
So I at first I was thinking it's going to be one or the other, but the more I looked at it, I feel like both are going to get that massive payday, and for different reasons. I think Deebo is going to go out in more of that free agent market. A team's going to make that big trade for him, and if you're going to make that big trade for him, you're going to pay him that big contract, like Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins. And you see oftentimes people will overpay in free agency. And DK, I think, will get a lot of money because who's getting paid in Seattle? There's nobody getting paid in Seattle. There's no quarterback. They got rid of Bobby Wagner. I think maybe their highest paid player might be Quandre Diggs at $40 million spread over, I think, 4 years or 3 years, maybe something like that. So, you're looking at a team that has a bunch of salary to throw at somebody, and they don't want to lose any more pieces because you just lose Russell Wilson. Okay, DK, here you go. Here's, $25, $26 million to stay here in Seattle and be our main attraction. Deebo Samuel, to me, again, if he's not doing all the Wildcat things, to me, he's not as valuable and not worth the 22, 23, 24, 25, $26 million. But I think because of the fact that you're going to make that big trade to go get him, you're going to go and pay him and lock him up for the long term. You're not going to trade for him and then not pay him the contract that he wants. So I think both are going to end up getting paid. One, because DK just is in a bad situation and they need to keep anybody. And the only way it seems like you're going to acquire Deebo is through a big trade. And if you make that massive trade, you want to make sure you get maximum value, and they're going to overpay.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like Joe said here, Deebo over DK, but DK gets more money because he's in a worse situation. Which, yeah, like you said, they're not paying anybody at the moment. Like everybody's super cheap. They don't have a lot of big name free agent stars, so it's like they have the money to throw for the potential.
Yeah.
But again, they don't have a quarterback. They maybe have a running back group by committee. I think the whole idea of them getting Kenneth Walker was the hope of he's the bell cow running back. And then you just have DK and Tyler Lockett. That's really your only two bright shining spots about Seattle. You have no defense. You have no offensive line. Oh, sorry. You have a linebacker in Jamal Adams that believes he I'm sorry. I forgot all about Jamal Adams.
And he's not even on the field. So are you even going to pay, are you going to renew that contract? So it's, again, if you're Seattle, you just have to find a way to keep some stars and keep butts in seats. And DK is the easiest way to do that for him.
And real quick, not to go too deep on it, if you're Seattle, would you restructure the whole Jamal Adams thing? Because you gave up a lot for him. So it's not like, I don't think there'd be a whole lot of teams out there that are going to give you the quality of stuff that you gave to New York for him. Because you took him, you paid him, and it's not like he's bad. But again, he's going to want, the super high contract. But, if you're a smart team, no, Jamal, you're not going to be a safety. You are not a safety. you are going to be like a weak side linebacker or a strong side linebacker, and we're going to have you blitz. That is it. You do not go in coverage because you suck at coverage.
And there's a market for that, which is fine, right? You play in the box line safety, which is absolutely fine. You want to come down and do that again. And if he could do that for 17 games a year, you pay him because he's very good at doing that. The problem is he's played 12 games the past 2 years, 14 the year before that. He's never been healthy with the Seattle Seahawks. So how much are you willing to mortgage your paycheck, even though you're not paying anybody else? Are you willing to keep investing money into something that's giving you razor thin margins? If he can play 17 games and you just keep him in inside linebacker, I'm fine with it. I'm willing to pay him whatever the market is. But because of the fact that he's only playing 12 games, you're not really gaining what you're putting in.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, so we'll keep with the NFL. And speaking of really crappy situations, we're going to move to my old place where I lived at for a few years. We're going to go to Washington, D.C., where Congress has issued a subpoena for Dan Snyder. We saw last week they called Roger Goodell to the stand. Joe and I kind of talked about this, how Roger kind of wants like the best of both worlds. He's like, I'm the boss. I'm in charge. I have the final say of everything. And he gets questioned. Okay, John. Okay, Roger. What the hell happened? That's not me. I don't have anything to do with that. Just because I'm the boss doesn't mean I know everything. Like, no, Roger. You knew. There's nothing that happens in that league that doesn't come across your desk at some point. Like, you don't have to approve everything, but it comes across your desk. How bad do you think this Washington thing will get? Because obviously you have everything that is with Washington to start with you, and on top of it, you have the John Gruden thing lingering in the background because he won his case and is going to potentially be moving forward with it. So at one point or another, somebody may or may not mention, hey, remember what John said, that he feels singled out, that y'all did this on purpose? Yeah, let's go ahead and look at those emails. Let's go ahead and look at those. Do you think it gets worse?
I think it gets worse because you already saw Daniel Snyder go and deny or decline or he's refusing to accept the subpoena, I think is the actual term that comes from the U.S. House Oversight Committee. It's just a poor situation, and Commanders fans have been ready to see Daniel Snyder go for a long time. And to me, you have to expect something to come out of Daniel Snyder's emails. Someone's going to come out and say something against him that is all similar along the lines that John Gruden is looking for, because the Jay Gruden situation in there, we've all heard about the horror stories in the front office in Washington. It's going to be a mess. It's absolutely going to be a mess. And I really don't know how it's going to get any better. I think he's going to end up being forced to sell the team. And that's just going to be the end of it for Daniel Snyder. I think the NFL is going to want to get that done as quick as possible. If I'm the NFL, I'm already ready to push for it, because if he's already refusing to accept the subpoena, you're in a bad spot, and it's only going downhill from here.
Well, and do you think that if he does this, like you said, he's refusing the subpoena, which he can, it's not going to end well if you do that, and we've already talked about it, it would have to take, I think, a majority of owners to actually remove him as the owner of the Washington franchise. And even then, I feel like he'd be kind of like Jerry Jones. Like, they would tell him go away, but he would get like all the copies of the keys made. He would change like all the passwords to only something he would know, so that way people can't get into it anymore. And again, we've seen owners band together through everything. We saw owners band together for Kraft, Jones, Kroenke, Snyder now, like ultimate, 100th times. Do you think they do it for this, or do you think eventually the owners are like, man, this is too big of just a mess? You're gonna, well, and it's gonna sound bad, but I'd be willing to bet a lot of these owners are gonna get exposed too with this whole email thing to start with. So again, do you think they turn on him? And to me, I'm also kind of surprised they haven't turned on him even quicker. And I don't know if it's maybe like a long game, like, oh, we're going to kind of play it cool. Like, we don't know. Like, we're not involved in this, so we're not going to look like the hasty, like, oh crap, like hide mom's getting ready to come in the door type thing. Do you kind of feel the same way that, they're going to kind of like rebel against him basically?
Yeah, I think at this point the bottom line hasn't been touched, and that's I think what the owners are really looking at. I think, okay, the bottom line's been fine. We can just sweep it under the rug, and now you're just seeing more and more outcry. And I think as we see more and more, these outcries leading to something, leading to movements, this is going to be one of them where you're going to see a whole faction of NFL fans, if not the entirety of the NFL fan base, say, we want Daniel Snyder out of there. And that's going to affect some of your bottom lines, going to affect some of your ticket sales, going to affect something. And then the owners are going to be like, oh, crap, let's get him out. He's bad for my business. He's hurting my bank. And also, like you mentioned, Dan Snyder and John Gruden are not the only people in the NFL that have said something wrong in an email. That's a guarantee. And I think Daniel Snyder, the amount of scrutiny he's been facing, it says, all right, if I'm going to be forced to sell, all you guys are coming down with me. And I am going to keep pushing these things out. So maybe he's told that to him. And he's very close with Goodell too. So I'm sure he has some information from him. And again, he's told all the owners, look, try to push me out. I have every single one of you guys caught red-handed. And here's this, here's that. And I'm just going to keep releasing. Again, I just think it gets worse and worse because you're going to have this power balance and this struggle to kind of force this side out.
Yeah. And kind of like I was telling Joe, to me, Washington seems like it, and it's going to sound really weird. I feel like they need to be run like Green Bay. Like, give ownership to the DMV area. So for people who don't know the DMV, no, not the Department of Motor Vehicles, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, give them DC, you get like 34%, Virginia, you get 33, and Maryland, you get 33. DC, you only get 34 because technically they're named Washington, so you get 1 extra percent, and so that way there can be somebody that has a majority power. And keep your president, keep your general manager, keep all of that because you've already put that in there as far as a new regime goes. And yeah, just take the team away from Dan. That to me is really the only thing that wins because we saw how much the Broncos went for, and the Broncos have been a very successful franchise. And it's not like nobody wouldn't buy Washington, but if you're a business person, you're not going to make a whole lot your first few years in that investment because you have to overcome the fact of, okay, they did a rebrand. Now they're the Washington Commanders. If I'm a business owner, first thing I'm doing, we're doing another rebrand. I'm being called the freaking Commanders with like a Madden 07 symbol and name and uniform pick.
That is something you go into my career and you say, yeah, what's a good Commanders? All right, boom, let's do it.
Literally, I watched a guy on TikTok that did this with, at the time, the St. Louis Rams. It's like, yeah, your city doesn't want you anymore. Now you can create your own team. You can create your own city. You can move wherever you want to. You can create a new name, logo, uniforms. And they're like, and I feel like they did that with all the potential logos and names. They were like, okay, Red Wolves, here's the most generic, Madden 07 wolf thing that the computer could come up with. What the hell is this? This is garbage. And so it's like if I'm a business person looking at Washington, you already have all of that to go with it. You have the stigma. Even though you're not directly a part of that, you're still inheriting that mess, and that's still going to be something that you have to deal with. And again, having lived in DC, it's not like Washington has a big fan base to start with, because I can tell you, living there, I saw a lot of Cowboys fans. I saw a lot of Giants fans. I saw a lot of Ravens fans because obviously Baltimore's not that far away. Really everybody but Washington. This is the only thing I've ever seen. And the only time I ever saw Washington fans was one of the few times when they were winning. Now that I did see. I was on the field for that when they kept chanting, "We want Dallas," and they got beat by Matt Castle. Cowboys at the time. So pitiful.
Hey, don't hit on Matt Castle. Don't. He got 11 wins. 11 wins.
Hey, I don't have anything against Matt Castle. Matt Castle's the only reason why Dallas even had a win at one. But yeah, Washington is such a mess, and it's like, again, I almost feel bad as a Dallas fan because I want that rivalry to be renewed. Like, I hate the fact that the NFC East is probably one of the worst divisions because you have Dallas that's always mediocre to inconsistent and underachieving. Philly is on and off all the time, kind of the same. I feel like Philly is a little bit more respected because they're more consistent. They don't always have this expectation of like Super Bowl or bust every year. New York is a dumpster fire. God. And then you have Washington, and it's like, no, y'all had so many opportunities. Like, you've built the teams, and it was kind of funny, not to get too off topic. Was it Deron Payne is actually ticked at RG3 because RG3 called Washington out and said, you have 4 former first-round picks that you drafted all on that defensive line. He goes, that should equal dominance. And Deron Payne said, who died and made this guy king? And it's like, well, yeah, you could consider RG3 a bust for them. He's not wrong. Like, you're mad that you're getting called out because you have Chase Young. Now, granted, Chase Young was hurt last year, so that we can only count that so much. So Chase Young was hurt. You still have Deron Payne, you still have Jonathan Allen, and you still have Montez Sweat. And you guys were one of the worst defensive units in the league.
Yeah.
Like at least if you're just giving up a ton of yards and points, you can just say, well, it's our secondary. No. This is the whole defense was garbage.
Yeah.
Whole defense.
It's a cluster fire right now in Washington, from the whole rebrand to the defense not performing. And I think they'll be back. I think the defense will be better. But again, it's not been a pleasant offseason, and it's not going to get any easier. And I think it's a lot of distractions going into a season where you brought in Carson Wentz. Taylor Heineke's basically saying he's going to start. I really got no shot because of the money that they paid. So it's a news trying to get this fresh start and fresh mindset into Carson Wentz's head, and the whole team is going to be focused on our owner is refusing to accept an subpoena from the U.S. government. We're going to be a surge. Someone's going to get fired. There's so many distractions. It's just not going to lead to a good season in Washington. So from the front office to the owner to the coach to the players, it's just a bad formula right now. And again, I thought the team would do a lot better this year. I thought they had an opportunity to win this division. With all this drama coming out, it's just hard for me to wrap my head around them really finding success and overcoming all the stuff going on over there.
Yeah, which I will say, quick shout out to Taylor Heineke for being a big enough person to say that. Like, he said, like, what, I'm making like $6 million. Yeah. He's making 30. He's like, you're not paying me to start. You're not paying him $30 million to sit on the bench. Like, I know I'm not going to be the starter. So shout out to Taylor Heineke for being like the only grown up there. As the Browns owner would put it, they want an adult in the room.
Trade for Taylor Heineke. There you go.
Literally, yeah, trade. Yeah, free, as Pride would say, free Taylor Heineke. Free Heineke. And yeah, that whole thing is a mess. Like the whole Jack Del Rio thing too, where people are upset about him, saying what he said. And it's like, and I could honestly see Washington getting rid of Jack Del Rio, which I feel like is just stupid. Like, his first year in there, he makes y'all a perennial defense. Last year, again, y'all just failed to live up to expectations. You didn't really have a quarterback. A lot of injuries happened. It's like Jack Del Rio is still a good defensive coordinator. And again, be the most Washington thing ever to just let that squander, even though y'all are butthurt because of what he said. Like, most Washington thing ever. Kind of like Cleveland. Traded 3 first-round picks, paid a guy $230 million just to start Jacoby Brissett, which, again, they wanted to start Jacoby. All they had to do was say it. Everybody would have thought they're weird, but at least everybody would be like, well, at least they didn't give a whole lot for him. Like, that's all you had to do, man. That's all you had to do.
It's been a wild offseason in the NFL. That's to say the least.
Literally, it has been a wild offseason. And, of course, it's also been a wild offseason as far as the NBA goes. Like we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, it's been crazy. Some of the moves have been made. So we'll kind of go well, we won't go super quick about this because we still got some time to kill. So one of the first things, obviously, Bradley Beal declined his player option. So, could you name like 3 spots that you see Bradley Beal going to for a potential destination?
So the first one that jumped to my head was Miami, because I think Miami needs this second scoring option. I think it'll free up Kyle Lowry, allow him to get healthier. And then they're expected to lose Victor Oladipo, so you can kind of move Tyler Hero off the bench, give him a little bit more time. Duncan Robinson comes back in. I just think they need a score. You can play on ball, off ball. I think to me, he makes a lot of sense to couple with Jimmy Butler. I also went and thought, how about Milwaukee? They could always use another piece away from Giannis, away from Chris Middleton, because they're a very Giannis dominant team, and you can surround Giannis with all these shooters. And now it's like, well, we can't even guard Giannis. Now we got to guard these guys who can knock down 3-point shots. And I think Bradley Beal wants to be somewhere where he can win. And I think he knows the best player on the planet at the moment looks to be Giannis Antetokounmpo. At least he's played like it, and whenever he's on the floor. And then a name that I don't see him going to, but has been thrown around a lot, would be the Boston Celtics. I think I've seen this reported a lot that he wants to be in Boston. He's trying to get to Boston. And it'd be an interesting fit. I mean, because we don't have to trade for him, I'd be more than welcome to have him. But he might have to take a backseat on the bench and maybe come there. But he could also start, right? And you can couple him and Marcus Smart with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and then go and play Grant Williams or Robert Williams. You can go a little bit smaller there, or you come off the bench in the second rotation. So to me, I think he's more likely to end up in Miami. I think that's the place that I think makes the most sense for Bradley Beal. But those other 2 teams, I think if he wants to win a championship, may be his best 2 options to go and win.
Now, real quick question though, if hypothetically he does go to Boston, because the biggest thing is Jason Tatum a number 1 or not? He
Right.
even said, "I'm not the number 1." Like he pretty much openly came out and said that his play on the playoffs has shown that a lot more than his regular season stats, which we kind of notice that tends to happen as a lot, with the exception of only a handful of players. You tend to drop once you go in the playoffs. If he goes to Boston, do you really see him going on the bench, or do you see them saying, hey Bradley, you be the number 1, Tatum, or like, here Bradley, you be 1A, Tatum be 1B. You guys are our duo. Bradley can kind of take more of the heat. Tatum can kind of be, more of a supporting role. And then you guys have a better, starting 5 as far as, him, Tatum, Horford, Smart, and Jaylen Brown. Like that'd be a deadly 5 lineup if everybody can stay healthy.
Yeah, I think it'd be a nice lineup to have. I think Jason Tatum's getting a little bit disrespected at the moment because of how he played in the finals. He was not good in the finals, but to me, that's been the one bad playoff series of his NBA career. I think he's been good in every playoff series he's been in. He's averaged 20 points a game, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. I think we forget that he's, just turning 25, 26 years old. So he's not even in the realm of, at his prime, maybe. So I think we're giving a little hate on Jason Tatum, but I think him in the starting lineup is interesting. And the only reason I said to come off the bench is just because if you want to play a legit 4 and a legit 5, you can with Beal off the bench. But if you wanted to go and play a little bit smaller, I have no issue with that. And that'd be a deadly, like we said. Jason Tatum, I think, would need another guy to throw past the ball to. I think Jaylen Brown would also like another guy to get a shot consistently, and they don't have to have the ball all the time. And that's a guy like Bradley Beal who can be a spot-up shooter, can take control of the ball when he needs to, and he's a veteran presence. So, yes, I like him in that starting 5, absolutely. To me, he still would be a number 3. I don't think he'd be a 1 or 2 in that Boston system.
Okay, and then where's your third place that you would have him going to?
So I had Miami, I had Milwaukee, and I had Boston. Those would be
Milwaukee,
my 3.
Boston. That's right. Yeah, I could definitely see Miami, because again, Miami is one of those few that if they wanted to trade for him, they could, because they have the depth across pretty much everywhere. And again, the biggest thing that we've said throughout the last 2 NBA seasons is Miami doesn't have a true number 1. Jimmy Butler is not the number 1. Like, he would potentially be that guy. And like you said, replacing, Victor Oladipo, who I think, again, they tried to make like a basically a number one by committee with him, with Jimmy, and Bam Adebayo, which didn't really work out for him so great. So I could definitely see that not happening. Not happening. I could definitely see him going to Miami. Like you said, that would be a little bit more realistic. I've heard the 76ers too.
Yeah.
I could see that with him, James Harden, and Ben Simmons. That would be not Ben Simmons. Not Ben Simmons.
That's a name no Philly fan wants to hear.
No,
Ben Simmons. They're happy to be gone. Joel Embiid, I think, is the name
Joel
you're looking
Embiid.
for.
Yeah, it's been a long day. I'm tired. Yeah, like him, Joel Embiid, and James Harden. Think about it, because again, we're kind of starting to see this whole trio thing starting to come back again. You look at the Lakers. It was supposed to be LeBron. It's supposed to be AD and Russ. Supposed to be.
Keyword.
Exactly. Now you look at the Clippers, which we'll kind of talk about that here in a second. You've got Kawhi, you've got PG. Now you have John Wall, who's linked to more than likely going to the Clippers. And now the Clippers have a big three. Hell, I could even throw this out there. He could go to Philly. He could even go to the Mavericks. He could be like, "Hey, Luka, do you want some help?" And I guarantee Luka would be like, "Yes, everything to do with that. Yes, yes." So yeah, or like you said, I think Milwaukee. If I'm Bradley, I would say Milwaukee would probably be the better bet.
Yeah.
Because you have Giannis, you have Middleton, and then you could have him. That would give Milwaukee a huge advantage. And again, it's not like Milwaukee was like a bum team by no stretch of the imagination. It was just one of those, they got beat by better teams, unfortunately. Let's see. And we'll move on to, we'll stay in the East. So Kyrie opted in. So what does this mean for the Nets now? So they still have KD, they still have Kyrie, which they never really just went ahead with just that combination of KD and Kyrie. They ended up bringing in James Harden, and that, obviously fizzled out. Again, do you see the Nets trying to make it work with him, or do you think that, again, the Lakers were trying to go after him? I don't know who the hell the Lakers would trade. They'd probably trade what little bit of like youth they have left to, to the Nets for him. And I know they want to include Russ, but if you're the Nets, would you trade Kyrie for Russ? Like at least if you're the Nets and you have Kyrie, and say Kyrie doesn't play because of the whole vaccine thing, he's not a detriment and he's not an asset.
Right.
If you have Russ, is that going to make KD happy? Probably not. And is he going to be more of a detriment to the team like he was with LA? Or is he potentially going to be an asset? Because it's like, at least with Kyrie, you don't miss what you don't have. But with Russ, it's like, God, we miss not having you on the team.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting balance. Again, we talk about the whole sign and trade thing, and he opts into his contract. I don't think anyone, he wasn't going to leave $36 million on the table. There's just no way he was going to do it, especially when he knows he wasn't going to get a long-term deal anywhere, because no one knows if they can count on it. And if you're the Nets now, you don't want to piss KD off, right? You want to keep KD happy. And to me, that means you don't bring in Russell Westbrook. But if the Lakers call and say, look, we'll give you AD, but give us Kyrie, give us Seth Curry, and give us a couple picks, that is a conversation I'm having with Kevin Durant. Say, hey, Kevin, yes, we're going to lose Kyrie, but we bring in Anthony Davis, who, yes, probably won't play 40 games. Might play half the season. But when he's on the floor with you, he is a matchup nightmare. He gives us the defense we're looking for. We still have Goran Dragic in house, and he can run point for us, and he can play. We still have good shooters around you. We can make this thing work. That's a conversation I could have. Besides that, I'm not sure any team is really looking to take on a Kyrie Irving, just because, again, can you count on him as one? Is he going to want to play with you guys as the other? If he doesn't want to play, isn't going to play. To me, the Lakers are the only spot I see Kyrie playing for outside the Brooklyn Nets. But if I can't go get AD out of that trade, if I'm the Nets, I say, you know what? I'm going to sit here. I'm going to settle with Kyrie and KD. I'm not going to push any buttons and just let it roll.
Yeah. Now, another name that, again, I haven't really seen a whole lot in free agency. Do you see Dame going anywhere?
If I'm Dame, I'm trying to leave, or I'm trying to get somebody. He posted a picture of him and Kevin Durant. That seems less and less likely now that Kyrie is back in town. But if I'm Dame, I'm ready to go, because I think we all saw his reaction of the Trailblazers getting like a mid pick in the lottery. He was like, "Man, I came here, and this is what ends up happening. They trade away your help in CJ McCollum. They've made a big splash getting kind of an average player to go be your number two." Unless you see a big name that you can go get, if I'm Dame, I'm saying, look, I've served my time. I've done everything I can, but I can't win a championship by myself. I'm not going to beat Golden State with this lineup. Get me out of here. The expectation is that you're going to see Portland in the next couple of days offer Dame a massive extension that everyone's going to say is really hard to turn down. But if I'm Dame, I'm ready to turn that down, and I'm ready to go anywhere else, whether that's go to the Lakers, whether that's go to, let's say, the Mavericks, wherever you think is your best spot to go. Let's say Miami. Miami's my best spot, or Milwaukee's my best spot. Wherever you think Damian Lillard is your best spot to win, I'm ready to move on from Portland. But apparently the numbers that Portland's going to throw at him are going to be really insane and hard to walk away from.
Oh yeah, definitely. But like you said, if I'm Dame, I kind of look at it like Matt Stafford with Detroit. Like, man, I've given y'all everything. Like, and again, we've seen it. One man, it's especially in the West, cannot carry a team like they used to anymore. Like, Braun was one of the few, but again, he could do it in the East.
Yeah.
Like, he ain't doing that in the West, because you still have Golden State to contend with. You still have, the Lakers, good or bad. You're going to have to contend with them. You have the Mavericks. You have the Suns.
The Nuggets, who are only going to get better.
The Jazz, even though the Jazz, they're a great regular season team. Now, you may be able to get past them in the playoffs. Maybe. But probably not likely. You have the Grizzlies with John Morant. Now, if I'm Dame, go to Memphis. Go work with the young kid. That'd be a hell of a duo. And then, of course, you have another team that you're going to potentially worry about, also in LA, called the Clippers now, with their new thing. So what's, and I've heard it kind of a lot here of lately, the whole people are buying into the Kool-Aid that is the Clippers again because of this. Again, do you think this is finally going to be the time where the Clippers get over the hump? Like, you had Doc Rivers, couldn't do it. Kawhi's hurt, coming back. Paul George kind of carried him when he wanted to / couldn't. And now you're going to get John Wall. Is this Clippers team finally going to be for real if all three of them can be on the court? Because, again, Kawhi's kind of like Kyrie. You're really going to have him for at least 50% of the year, probably less.
Again, I lost all faith in the Clippers after that year. It was really the bubble year when they went out and they got Kawhi and Paul George, and I said, man, you're adding him to a team with Lou Williams and Pat Bev and Montrezl Harrell. Like, think about how are you going to stop that team? And they just looked bad in the postseason. They just looked awful. But the interesting part for me with John Wall is, if I'm the Clippers, by no means necessary am I starting John Wall, because you have Reggie Jackson in house. I'd start him. Now John Wall comes off the bench. John Wall has played, I think, maybe 16 games over the past 3 years. That's what it's felt like. He's played that many games. So you don't pound his body. He's an athletic guy who lives off of being quicker and faster than everybody else. That's the way his game is. Come off the bench in 5-10 minute splurges. All right, go take a rest, and we'll have Reggie Jackson, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George run it. That might be the best thing for him, because you can get the scoring off the bench with John Wall in your spurt. You can still pair him up with either Paul or Kawhi in the second team, and then you can go ahead and still run your first team with Reggie Jackson, who gave you 17 points a game last year. That, to me, is something that can make them dangerous. And again, if Kawhi can play, he's always going to be a problem just because of what he can bring defensively. But I'm never going to sit here and say, I have full faith in the Clippers. They lost all my faith that first year. I was so shell-shocked at the way they went out. I've never picked the Clippers again.
And then of course we'll end the night since we're getting closer. We're coming to the end of June now, coming into July. Um, we'll start from the bottom and work our way up. If you had to look at the preseason team right now for the NFL, who would be your bottom of the barrel 32nd ranked team in the NFL?
Goodness gracious. I mean, there's so many teams that that I honestly could throw out there. I think I'd go Seattle. You're playing in a tough division. You don't have a quarterback. You really have nothing, no O-line. You're hoping Kenneth Walker could be that guy, but if he's the only spectacle on that team, now you're in a bad spot. I think you could throw a bunch of names in there. Houston, you could throw in there. Jacksonville, I think you could throw back in there. But I think I'd probably go Seattle as your bottom of the barrel team.
So I'm gonna go a little bit opposite. I'm gonna stay in the NFC though. I'm gonna go with the team that fell victim to 28-3. I'm gonna go with Atlanta. And you're starting Marcus Mariota, who king of like 9-7 with Tennessee, and that was with a pretty decent roster, like a decent offensive line. You had DeMarco Murray for a long time, then you had Derrick Henry. You've had decent wide receivers, decent tight ends. You've had all of that pretty much your entire time. And now you're going to Atlanta, where basically he has Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and that's it. He doesn't have a running back, has a crap defense with a ton of holes, and you've got no offensive line. I'm going to put Atlanta. And it's one of those, like you said, you could very easily see the Texans. I don't see the Texans as that bad though. Like
I don't
for what they had last year, and again for Davis Mills to be like the second best rookie out of that class with the Texas roster, like it's not bad.
It's something to lean on. Something to lean on for sure.
Oh yeah. Now who would you have ranked number one? Because I've seen some crazy look. I still see people saying the Packers are ranked number 2, and I'm like, how like what have you all smoked that you believe the Packers are number 2 without Devontae Adams? And you're like, the Packers are still number 2.
Yeah.
What?
I need some of that. That's for sure. Man, I think the AFC West got a lot better all around, but just because I think everybody in that division is so good, I'm going to go Buffalo. I think Buffalo, to me, you got the defense still just as good, and you add Von Miller. Offensively, yeah, I think maybe you're a receiver short, but you saw the resurgence of a couple of guys in the playoffs. You still have Stephon Diggs. You have the running back behind you, Zach Moss. Josh Allen's not going anywhere, and you're going to be right back. You're going to play maybe one of the easier divisions in the AFC because you're really talking about New England. If Miami and Tua can figure it out, maybe Miami. The Jets you don't have to worry about. That would be a team I'd throw up there. I think a close second team would be the Chargers coming out of that division just because Herbert, you have the offensive line there, you have the defense and holes there. But I think there's so many good teams. The Bengals, of course, are still going to be good. And if the Browns could have a quarterback, maybe I'd throw them up there, but they don't have one. So I think it's narrow. I think 1, 2, 3 to me are pretty close, but I think I'd go Buffalo as the top of the AFC or top of the NFL.
Okay. I'm gonna go opposite. I'm gonna say the Bengals is number 1, and like you said, they're so good, and I feel like again on paper they got better. They retooled their offensive line, which is obviously what they needed to do. They kept pretty much everybody on the defense because they already re-signed everybody through free agency to start with anyway. They lost Will Jackson this free agency, didn't they? If I remember right,
so.
to Washington.
I believe so.
So maybe the secondary takes a little bit of a step back. We'll see. But you still have Joe Burrow. You still have Joe Mixon. You still have Jamar Chase. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. And again, they had better in the tight end with what is his name? Who did they get at tight end?
I thought they lost their tight end to the Jets.
They did. They lost C.J. Uzomah.
Right.
They signed somebody. Bengals.
Hayden Hurst, I believe, is who they
Yeah,
select.
Hayden Hurst from the Ravens. So not bad. I think he's a little bit better than CJ, but we'll see. But I'm gonna have to go with the Bengals. I almost went with the Chiefs. The only reason I didn't was because of the Chiefs' defense. I have a lot of questions about that defensive line.
Yeah, you lose
and their
Honey
wide
Badger.
receiver. Yeah, they lost Honey Badger. I have a lot of questions about their wide receiver because you have Juju, you have Marcus Valdez-Scantling, you have Travis Kelce. Like,
I trust one of them.
yeah, I
think
trust Travis. No,
Juju's going to be
actually,
TikToking in the corner, and then
I trust two. Kansas City was like, "Hey, we got to get rid of Jackson. Bring Juju in. Bring Juju. Same, but different, but still same." Like, to me, is exactly what I thought of when they brought him in. Kansas City, Cincy, and then I would probably agree. You could probably put Buffalo at 2, even at 1. Again, they've kept a lot of their core pieces of pretty much everything. They didn't re-sign Cole Beasley, if I remember right.
Yeah,
so they have Stephon Diggs. I don't know if they still have Emmanuel Sanders or not. So the wide receiver room is a little questionable for me. But again, like you said, though, there's still a lot of potential there with Buffalo, especially defensively. You still have Josh Allen. They just have to get over. Just don't go to Kansas City. All right, Buffalo. just do well enough to get home field advantage over Kansas. You don't have to be the 1 seed. If you want to get the 1 seed, fine, get the 1 seed. I wouldn't recommend it. But if you can be like the 2 seed and Kansas City be like the 4 or 3, do it. So that way you can at least play in Buffalo. Oh, and by the way, you can win the damn coin toss.
Yeah, you're still talking about teams like Tampa. You still have teams like LA, and that we haven't even talked about. So the NFL is going to be hot. I think the best team is going to be in the AFC, just in terms of preseason rankings. But maybe just because of how good the AFC is, the NFC team is healthier coming into the Super Bowl, and they walk away with it. Again, the NFL is so loaded. I mean, the AFC is so loaded this year. It's kind of flop of, at least in my time, what it's felt like. The NFC has always been the more dominant division, and the AFC has always been a little bit lackluster. Now it's like, okay, well, the AFC's got everybody. Who do you want? They're in the AFC, so it's going to be fun.
That's true. I always noticed that, like growing up, like you said, the NFC was kind of always the powerhouse. Like it always had the favorites, but the AFC was always more consistent. But it was only because you had like the same 3 teams all the time.
New England, Indy, Pittsburgh.
That's it. Like anybody else, it was like, oh, Baltimore's in the picture. Okay, cool. It's Baltimore. Nobody cares. Like, oh, hey, Denver. Nobody cares. Like Houston, nobody cares. So yeah. And then the NFC, it was always like a hosh-posh of whoever would come in. And it looks like Joe has Carolina at 32, which
I can see that.
I can see that. Again, quarterback situation is very iffy.
Hey, Matt Corral, that's Joe's guy. I know Joe loves Matt Corral. So
Matt Corral, exactly. Exactly. And then he has the Rams at 1, which again makes sense. Offensively, they should still be a dominant firepower. My big question, though, is what do they do now that Andrew Whitworth is gone?
Yep.
They did not go out and get a left tackle. That's the only thing they didn't do. Short at the defense, retooled the offense, did not get a left tackle. Which, again, it's not like you can easily just get another Whitworth off the shelf, but it's like he didn't even try.
Yeah.
Didn't try.
So they gotta love who they have in house. That's all that is to it.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting. Like you said, I'm so excited. Like college football is going to be a blast. NFL is going to be a blast. The NBA, depending on how this free agency goes, is going to be really interesting. College basketball, of course, is always interesting, like it is every year. So I'm definitely excited. We just need to 2 more months.
2 more months. Just get over the hump.
Because I know everybody's like, oh, football's back in August when preseason. No, it's not.
Is it
It is, but it's not. It's like, oh, cool. I get to watch the backups play. If I'm bored on like a Tuesday night and I want to watch the backups of like Washington and Carolina duke it out, like, oh yeah, 16-0, yay! No. But Thank you, though, to everybody who watched. We definitely appreciate it. Joe, we know you're watching. Hopefully you will be back next week. We need you. We miss you. Because who else is going to, how is Amon just going to tell me that my favorite receiver is 1-1?
Yeah. I need the other one. I have one. I need someone else to put up the other one.
Exactly. He needs his other one in this, man. It can't just be him. Like, no. And who else is going to give me crap for that? Who else? Damian said he's going to hate Monday Night Football. Now, I kind of see a lot of that because a lot of people hate Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Like, it's better than what ESPN has had in the last, 7-8 years because Mike Tirico left for NBC a long time ago.
Yeah.
Everything else they've had has been crap. Yeah. So, exactly. See? Exactly. But again, thank y'all. Please like, share, and subscribe to all the ASAP stuff that we have. All the shows are great. We're actually going to have the night show again tonight. So, Amon, if you're bored, you want to hop on, you're more than welcome to. Amon, tell the people where they can catch your podcast, what time you post, everything like that.
Yeah, you can catch me right there. It is. That's the right side. Right there. If you plug that into wherever you get your podcast, you will find me. I try to post every week. Haven't in the last 2 weeks just because I've been so busy, but talk about all kinds of sports. If you want to learn about cricket, here's a place you can go and find an introduction into the world of cricket as well. You can also catch me on Friday on ASAP Network with ASAP Recap with my man Dustin. You can catch me on a couple of ASAP in the mornings during the week as well. And of course, every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, you can catch me right here on Jawing and Balling.
Exactly. I'm kind of the same as Mon. Inside the Hoosier Mind, been kind of iffy here and there as far as posting again. For most of y'all that know, NFL, college football is kind of my big thing. Slowly starting to educate myself in basketball, but again, just not as strong as my football topics. I usually repost some of these episodes because, again, you can always catch me on Wednesday night. I always have great shows with Joe and Amon. But yeah, and of course you can catch me on the night show. We haven't been as consistent here of lately, but we're gonna fix that again. News just hasn't been there, and again, it's summertime. Everybody's trying to party. We all have lives. Like we're working on it. We're working on it. But again, thank y'all for watching, and we will see y'all next week, hopefully with a full crew. Peace.